Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Mobile in Black and White, the neighborhood series. We are excited to begin our topics with voting. And it's so important that we as a community understand the foundations of voting, voting registration, uh, actually think about how voters can engage and continue to make a difference and be a part of the difference in our community. And so today we're very honored to have our very own Adline Clark, who is a member of the House of Representatives, representing the 97th District. And so
Yes,
thank you so much for being here.
it's an
And,
honor for me to be here with you all this evening.
and thank you, Ryan. Tell everyone hello, and then we'll get started with our conversation.
Hi, it's really nice to see everyone, and thank you for watching. And this is obviously a super important topic all the time, not just when it's election time, but since it is election time, we're going to highlight it. Um, and Representative Clark, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your positions are and how that is reflected in the importance of voting?
Thank you, Ryan. I am, again, a member of the Alabama House of Representatives. I'm one of 105 members of the Alabama House. Of course, there are 35 senators in the Alabama legislature. I was elected to serve an unexpired term in May of 2013. I was reelected in 2014. Fortunately, did not have opposition that year, but in 2018, I did have opposition, and am happy to say that I won I think about 65% of the vote in the 97th legislative district. For the purpose of this interview, I think it is important that I state the fact that I serve on the House Constitution, Campaigns, and Elections Committee, so that any bills that are related to voting have to receive a favorable report in the Constitution, Campaigns, and Elections Committee of both the House and the Senate in order to move or to advance to the floors of the Senate and the House for a vote of those bodies. I also serve as one of 3 House Democratic Party whips. I serve as secretary of the Alabama Legislative Black Caucus.
Well, we just appreciate your service and all that you do for our community, and we're excited to get this conversation going on voting. So let's talk a little bit about just voter registration. Why is this so important to our community, and what are some of the things that we can do now in preparation for voting?
Well, voter registration is so very important because in order to participate in the electoral process, one must be registered in all states. You can register at the age of 18 in the state of Alabama. You can do it manually by paper. You can get a voter registration form at public libraries. I don't know whether you can gain access to those readily in this COVID environment. However, you can get a voter registration form from the border registrars downtown in the Mobile County Government Center Annex. You can also download an application and print it from the Secretary of State's website or at www.alabamavotes.gov. When I went to the legislature in 2013, we could not register to vote electronically. I think the legislature approved a bill which was brought forth actually by Secretary of State John Merrill. I don't remember who carried the bill. I do remember that I quickly offered a bill. I think before I actually filed it, I had some conversation with him, and he was already in the process of having a bill that would allow us to register online, move through the legislature. And so he felt that he could get that done more successfully. And being a rookie, I believed him. And he actually, I monitored the process the entire way. He made good on his promise to me, and he was able to get that bill through the legislature. And so now you can use a smartphone or any other electronic device to register to vote in the state of Alabama. And it is a very simple, painless process. When I was campaigning in 2018, Some of my most joyful moments were when I encountered 18-year-olds who had not yet registered. One young man was sitting in the master barber seat over in the Maysville area, and I was talking to the master barber, trying to get his support and asking if I could put signage at his business location. And I asked the young man if he was registered to vote, and he said, no, no, ma'am. He was so polite. And I said, may I help you register to vote? And so I took my smartphone out and I was fumbling, and I finally said, here, you do it. And he was typing faster with 2 thumbs than I can type with 8 fingers. And he was so proud. And I was just thrilled that in just a matter of minutes, he had registered to vote. And he promised me that he would vote in the election that year and that he would vote for me. So I was very pleased.
Well, you bring up a few interesting points, thinking about the collaboration that happened with your colleague in the House, just hearing that that's actually occurring as it relates to things that the citizens need, because with this day and age, we can register for just about anything online. And so
Yes,
we
indeed.
appreciate those efforts for that convenience. And we're glad
Yes,
to know that
indeed.
type of collaboration is happening.
Yes, indeed. And so thank you for allowing me to inform some and remind others that it is just that easy to register to vote in Alabama now. Many people are unaware that you can register to vote on your smartphone.
That has to be super helpful for, younger generation.
Yes.
But I imagine, the younger folks have always been very tough to get to the polls, tough to register. It's super easy now, but how do we let young folks know, to do it?
Well, we actually, civic organizations, including our graduate chapters of sororities and the League of Women Voters here in Mobile, actually do an outstanding job. I think together, they probably go into all of the public high schools and probably some of the private schools as well to register students. I think they probably go in at least once a year and sometimes twice a year to help students register to vote when they become of age.
That's awesome.
Let's talk a little bit about the deadline for registration for this term.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Very important point. The deadline to register to vote in the November 3rd general election is October 19th. I think the cutoff is actually 5 p.m. And that is important because if you are registering on your electronic device, you need to do it by 5 p.m. and not 5:01 or 5:30, not 11:59, but I think 5 o'clock on October 19th. And then if you are turning in a paper application, it needs to be submitted to the Board of Registrars by that time.
And so what about for people who want to make sure that they're registered and they want to make sure, for example, if their name has changed or something has changed, where do they go to make sure and find out that information?
And so if you have registered or updated your voter registration, either manually or online, you can go to alabamavotes.gov and you can actually, there's an icon, I think they're on the home page, that you can click to check your voting status. It will give you, well, it will tell you whether you are a registered voter, or it will say no record found. Hopefully, if you're checking, you are an active voter, and it will reflect that. It will tell you your polling place as well. And this year, I think for the very first time, it will tell you the status of your absentee voting application if you have exercised that option.
Will you tell us, let's talk about absentee. This is something I actually got a call today. A friend of mine said, do I need to fill out this application if I'm planning on going down there? So could you give us just a rundown of absentee voting?
I would be delighted. And I am excited about absentee voting this year because due to the environment that we find ourselves in, everybody can use COVID-19 as an excuse to vote absentee. Previously, excuses to vote absentee included traveling outside of the county, um, being enrolled at a school outside of the county in which you live, your work schedule. If you were going to work 10 straight hours that, for the most part, conflict with the voting hours of 7 to 7. If you were a caregiver, that was a legitimate excuse. Also, health issues. I mean, if you are bedridden, for example, certainly you are entitled to vote absentee. Well, this year, anyone who has concerns about going into a polling place, into a precinct to vote, can use the excuse of COVID-19 to vote absentee. This year, it's almost like we have early voting. And each year that I've been in the legislature, I have received quite a few emails from constituents and other folk, I mean, throughout the state saying, we want early voting. We see on national TV coverage that many states, and I don't recall the number, but many have early voting, which gives voters the opportunity to vote within a certain window of time at their convenience. We do not have early voting in the truest sense here in Alabama, except this year, because we can use, again, COVID-19 as an excuse. We can go to the absentee elections office in the Mobile County Government Center Annex at 151 Government Street any weekday, Monday through Friday, from 8 to 5, and just say, I want to vote absentee. And all you need to do is complete a very simple application, which you can actually find online, complete, print it, take it with you, along with a copy of your ID, or that you will be given a blank application at the window at the absentee elections office, and you present your ID and they make a photocopy, process that application very quickly, and then you will be given a ballot on the spot. So you can actually do it all in one stop, or you can, again, take the completed application and a copy of your ID with you, which will save you a trip through the line because you give your ballot, you give rather your completed application and your photo ID and immediately get a ballot versus having to make a second trip, through the line. You can also complete the application and mail it to the local county absentee elections office. And when you get your ballot back in the mail, you have 2 ways to return it. You can either do that, well, actually 3. You can do that by the United States Postal Service. I would recommend putting 3 first-class stamps on the return envelope. You may hand deliver your ballot in person to the absentee elections office. And I've been amazed at the number of people who are doing that. And I think the reason is because folk are not trusting the mail these days because of the negative publicity they've been hearing about there being a chance that your ballot might not get delivered in time. And if it's not delivered in time, then it probably won't be counted. And so I've seen a number of people, including seniors. I saw someone, Joelle, I think, who we probably both know, who taught once over in Africatown. I think she might be 96 years old, had her son drop her off so that she could go in and hand deliver her ballot. And that is a requirement. When you make the decision to have your ballot hand delivered, you have to do that personally. This 96-year-old wonderful former teacher and guidance counselor had to do that herself. Her handsome son, who drove her down there, circled the block while she went in and submitted her application. You have to show your ID to prove that you are, in fact, the voter whose name is on the label that's on the envelope that you're giving to one of the clerks in the absentee elections office. So you cannot send your ballot back by your significant other, your mother, your child. You have to deliver it in person, or you need to mail it in sufficient time. And my colleagues and I are recommending that although the deadline to apply for an absentee ballot is October 29th, that you get that ballot, that application completed and mailed, or go to vote absentee in person by the middle of October at the very latest. Do not risk having your ballot go to Timbuktu or get lost in the mail, which could happen. However, you're going to be monitoring the process by going to alabamavotes.gov, and it will tell you what date actually that your application was received, what date the office mailed your application, or rather your ballot to you, and the date that it was received back by the absentee elections office.
What types of ID are acceptable?
Most people will show a driver's license or a non-driver's license. I think college IDs are also acceptable, and I think high school identification cards are also acceptable. They have to be a photo ID. Military ID is also acceptable.
And so,
And it has to be current. It should not be expired. And
so everyone
also,
needs to check their dates on their driver's license or their
thank you.
identification. Okay.
Yes, yes. And also, your current address should be on that ID, unless you are serving in the military or attending a college. I was down at the office on this past Saturday. So thanks to my colleague, Dr. Representative Barbara Drummond, she talked to some folk, including Judge Don Davis and our circuit clerk, to request that the absentee elections office be open on one Saturday. Well, when it was all said and done, they agreed to actually open that office on 3 consecutive Saturdays, the first of which was this past Saturday. There were people in line. The office opened at 9. There were people in line standing in the rain with their umbrellas, and some without, as early as 8:30. And there was a steady flow of people coming and going, of all ages, all races. It was just wonderful to see people coming out, voting early to be counted. It made me feel very good that people want to participate, in the process.
I'm excited that I think you said probate judge
Don Davis, yes.
And others worked with Representative Drummond to.
She's a pretty persuasive person, but
provide that for the community. I believe
yes,
that any citizens will appreciate the efforts to be able to come on a Saturday.
And if they didn't come this past Saturday, they will have the same opportunity on the coming Saturday, October 17th, and again on Saturday, October 24th. Those hours again are 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. to register to vote by absentee ballot in person, or to hand deliver a ballot that you may have already received in the mail.
I'm going to go back to a policy question again, if that's okay. Now that we get to do this via absentee ballot for the first time, where it's basically open to everyone, what are the prospects for being able to make this a policy where this becomes law, where you can vote absentee without excuse?
Ryan, what a wonderful question. Would you believe me if I told you that efforts have been made numerous times to have such legislation passed? This past session, I think it was Representative Thomas Jackson of Thomasville, who introduced a no excuse absentee voting amendment. And I would like to think that it would have passed. However, it did not come up in the Constitution Campaigns and Elections Committee prior to our spring break. But then we had an extended spring break because of COVID. And so far fewer bills were passed, probably about a third as many bills that are normally passed by the legislature in a regular session were passed in the 2020 session because we were there far fewer days than we normally are. I don't know if you all have noticed, but as people have had peaceful protests throughout the nation, and our young people who are involved in interviews have so often asked for more voting rights and more convenient ways of voting. And one of the things that they have asked for in many of those interviews have been and recommended is early voting if their states don't already have that, and no excuse absentee voting, and also automatic voter registration. We have introduced bills, my caucus, members of my House Democratic caucus have introduced those bills year after year after year. I'm hoping that we will have gained some momentum and that our memories will be long and not short when we get back to Montgomery in February of 2021, and that we can get favorable reports of these bills in committee, and that both the full House and full Senate will vote yay on those bills.
Well, we are just excited to be able to help others be informed about this process, because I think for me, understanding how do we get things like early voting and absentee with no excuse and automatic like those are types of things that I think I would love to know more about in terms of like how do we inform our elected officials that this is something that we would desire for our community, for ourselves, for our families. And what types of things can we do to make a difference in areas like that?
Well, for starters, everybody can contact their legislators to ask for those three types of legislation. You can do that by calling them. The very best way to do it in this day and time is to email us. All of us have email addresses that are issued by the House of Representatives and the House and the Senate. In the House, our email addresses, and Senate as well, are very simple. Mine is Adline, A-D-L-I-N-E .Clark, C-L-A-R-K-E @AL, short for Alabama, house.gov. And in the Senate, your senator's email address is going to be first name last name @alsenate.gov. And so I would recommend that you reach out to your legislators to let them know that you would appreciate it if they would introduce or support such legislation and how important that is to you.
Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about the ballot. I think I've gone to vote several times and been surprised about what's on the ballot. How do we learn what's on the ballot, and what types of things will help us be able to be more informed when we're ready to vote?
Well, as an election approaches, you should always go to the Secretary of State's website, which you can access by going to alabamavotes.gov. And for this election, the November 3rd general election, for example, there are sample ballots for each county. And so you can click on your county's ballot to see what will be on that. And every county's ballot is going to be a little bit different. Every county's ballot will lead off with the presidential candidates. That's our top office. And so it will say at the top of the ballot that you have an opportunity to vote, to do straight party voting. And you can either circle Alabama Democratic Party or Alabama Republican Party. And all you need to do if you want to vote a straight ticket is to circle one of those ovals on page 1 of the ballot. Or you can vote office by office. You don't need to do both. You need to either vote the straight ticket and circle one oval, or don't circle straight party and then proceed to vote candidate, by office for the candidates of your choice. Once you have completed the front side of the ballot, you need to flip it over. You have an opportunity to vote on 6 statewide amendments on the back side of the ballot. You can read the entire text of those proposed amendments at alabamavotes.gov. It's a lot of reading. I strongly recommend, however, that you read it prior to going to vote absentee in person or prior to going to the polls on November 3rd. The bills are quite lengthy. It takes a minute, I think, to digest them, although you can Google a site that I recommend that you read to get some perspective on the amendments is aclualabama.org, I think it is, or Google ACLU Alabama for Alabama Civil Liberties Union. Gives some interesting perspective, some food for thought on the amendments. And then in Mobile, the last thing I think that you get to vote on the ballot is whether you want to vote for or against the pay-as-you-go road program. It is not a new tax. It has been around for a long time. I'm going to dare to say that we need it because we yet have lots of unpaved roads and certainly roads that need to be resurfaced. We approved, the legislature approved, and the governor signed quickly into law the fuel tax back in 2019 in a special session. It will bring in the minimum amount of money needed to improve our infrastructure in Alabama. The governor wanted to recommend a much higher tax, but she decided not to risk that and to go with a lower amount so that gradually, and it will be gradual, that we will improve our infrastructure throughout the state.
Let's talk a little bit about the digital divide and its impact on this election and things that have been revealed as a result of the pandemic.
Well, you know, there are naysayers out there who don't even believe there is a digital divide. However, I think the three of us know that one definitely exists. It makes it actually harder to become knowledgeable of things like the amendments on the ballot and the sample ballot, even what it looks like. Some people have to wait until they get, and I guess the used to be daily newspaper still prints information on the election, what's going to be on the ballot in the paper on that Sunday prior to the election. Many people have to wait until they get to the polls to be given a sample ballot, you know, by an organization that wants you to vote the way they want you to vote. That's not a good time to be handed a sample ballot. I guess it's better than no time if you trust, you know, the party or organization that you're receiving that information from, but it certainly does not give you time to read. I mean, let's be honest, when you get to the polls, the chances of you sitting there reading all 16, the information that is on the ballot about rather all 6 proposed statewide amendments, the chances of you doing that are pretty slim. And so if you don't have a computer or electronic device, chances are you are not gonna read. You're not gonna go, most people are probably not gonna go to the library where they have such an opportunity to read those. And so the digital divide as a consequence just makes it tough to be informed and stay informed of what's going on in the whole world around us.
Do you know of any efforts, particularly in the state of Alabama, towards kind of bridging that divide, that digital divide?
Well, yes, I do know that and some COVID-19 federal funds are being used to expand broadband throughout the state. That's as much of a problem as the lack of equipment, you know, in households. We have areas where you don't have internet connection, or it costs so much to get it that the average household cannot afford it. And so we're trying to do something about that at the state level.
Cool.
Let's sort of think, what does every citizen need to know? You know, we appreciate all the expertise and things you share with us. That's really essential for us in the coming weeks and the coming days. But what overall do citizens need to know about voting?
Citizens need to know that it is of the utmost importance that we all participate in the electoral process. Many of us believe that our single vote won't make any difference. And to a certain extent, you know, there's some truth to that, but collectively, if enough of us vote for change or to keep things as they are, that voting block will make a huge difference in the outcome of an election. So we need to keep the faith, we need to participate and believe that our participation will make a difference. And we need to encourage other people, especially like-minded people, to participate in the process as well, because that's how we bring about a change. If we're dissatisfied with how things are, if we don't participate, I can't remember whose slogan it is. If you don't vote, don't complain. That holds true today. We must at least make an effort, and then our consciences will be clear that we did vote, that we did try, and hopefully our candidates will win.
What are some of the things that are holding people back now? I know, you know, traditionally there's been all sorts of things that have kept people from voting, and in particular, you know, when you live or identify as in a community that doesn't seem to ever make any progress, regardless of how much you vote. What are the things now that kind of hold people back from voting?
Apathy is certainly one of those things. We just cannot be apathetic. We've got to at least take a chance and go to the polls and believe that our votes will make a difference. We also need to, more of us need to run for office even. Sometimes we leave that responsibility to others. Often we encourage people to run, people that we believe will make good office holders, good representatives and senators and council members and mayors and congressmen and what have you. Often those folk who are urging us to run might even be better candidates themselves, but sometimes believe that that they can't for various reasons. And we often have work responsibilities, family responsibilities that prevent us from making that sacrifice, and it is truly a sacrifice. However, I'd like to see others, and Ryan, forgive me and don't forgive me, agree with me. We need more women and we need more minorities to run for office. In the Alabama legislature, we need to be in all legislatures. We need to be more reflective of the population in our state. We need more balance. And I think that our legislative bodies will be better when, and I'm going to be terribly optimistic here, when we achieve that goal.
I want to say one more thing about that since you called me out. You know,
speak, Ryan, speak.
There are so many qualified African American women who are ready to lead all throughout the country, to be perfectly honest. But I meet them here in Mobile. I meet them in other places in Alabama. What can we do to help draft them into, you know, actually doing what you did, right? Like actually seeking office at state and local levels when we desperately need their exact kind of leadership.
There's an organization, Ryan and Joelle, called Emerge. And if you've not heard of it, I encourage you to Google. Emerge is a national organization. I don't recall the number of chapters there are throughout the nation, but Alabama actually has an Emerge chapter. And the purpose of that chapter is to train women to become candidates for office, and not just become candidates, but to win. And so in the 2018 election, a number of women who participated in that program, and I can't remember the number of weeks of training, but it's a very good training ground. I won, but I would have been a much better candidate, a much more savvy candidate had I participated in the Emerge program prior to seeking office. I had to scramble. I had to learn a lot of things on my own. I had some friends who were elected officials, but had not had to stand for re-election in quite some time, and things had changed. They were telling me about the old school way of doing things. I had to quickly learn how to blend old and new school techniques in order to reach all of the residents within my district, from one age group to another. Emerge helps you learn techniques and strategies much more quickly than I did. It is a wonderful organization, and for women who are interested in political careers, I strongly recommend that you Google Emerge Alabama to obtain more information.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you for asking that question, Ryan. Very good question.
Excellent questions. We just appreciate your time and just giving us, really helping us learn about what we need to know about voting right now. And so on behalf of Mobile in Black and White, Representative Clark, we'd like to thank you for your time today. And we look forward to future conversations with you where we can really continue to dive into the needs of our community and things that we need to think about as it relates to the divide that we see, and things that we can do in our community to help heal and make progress. And so again,
Yes.
Thank you for your time and lending us your expertise in this area.
It was my pleasure, and am so delighted to have had this opportunity to have this conversation with you, and truly I look forward to our future conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.